I'm heading over to a disused quarry that I've been trying to make work about and find out about for years. It's part of my most frequent walk around here, and I'm going to show you what finally helped me find out about the history of the place, and let's see if it helps me tell the story of the place, or at least ask questions. Right, so what we're talking about is map regression. Now, that's a term that's used in different arenas of science. So I believe there's a mathematical type of map regression. I am going nowhere near that. This is archaeological map regression. And this is, in its simplest terms, I'm going to be doing it. There are, I guess, levels of difficulty in terms of how you perform this, I would imagine. What I've learned about so far on, and in case you don't know, I've mentioned it in a few videos now, I'm doing an MA in contemporary art and archaeology, and so this kind of mix of the two is really interesting. But this is one of the techniques that I learned quite early on, and it's an amazing way to help you tell your stories photographically, or, you know, in any other way. So what I'm going to do today is show you how to do that. The basics of it are that you find a set of old maps, or maps going from now back until as far back as you can go. The simplest way to describe it is that you compare them. You go back and you keep going back and you keep going back until you have an idea of the story of the place through the maps. I'm going to illustrate this by showing you the quarry that I'm working on now. I'm doing a project on it. You may well have seen already some footage of me working in it in this video. And what I'm going to do is go through a map regression of the old Preston Hill quarry, and show you how I found out, and I'm still figuring out the story of what is quite a small area, really. And how doing so helped me hone in on the elements of that landscape, this industrial landscape, or post-industrial landscape, I guess, that are important for my story. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a tool that you can use to tell your stories as well, be they documentary or documentary landscape or whatever. But anyway, in order to do this, you can do this however you like, as long as you've got access to maps. However, I'm going to take you to a very specific website, which focuses on mostly Scottish, because I'm in Scotland. It focuses on mostly Scottish maps. It does have worldwide maps and wider Great Britain maps as well. You may have to find your own source. I am not an expert in online repositories of online maps. So hopefully what I can do here is give you the technique, and then you can go away and do your own research. And please do let me know down below how you get on. I'd be really, really fascinated to know if it's helped. Right. In my case, I found that while this works, I've switched to Mac just recently, and for whatever reason, it's been a little bit buggy on Mac, and for some weird reason, it's been much less buggy on my iPad. So, okay, so this is the fun bit. Get my hat on for this bit properly. Where you want to go is maps.nls. Maps.nls, and there we have it there. .uk. This is for the National Library of Scotland's online map repository. And now you've got a few options when you're in here. There's a wealth of different things, and military maps came in handy actually for another project, which I'm going to do another video on, which is on the other side of town, and is also not talked about, very little information about. This helped me find out as much as I possibly could about it. For me, it's worth experimenting with all of these, and I think for For those of you who like me are kind of map nerds, love looking at maps, this will be like hog heaven for you. I'm going to go with the side-by-side viewer at the top right here. And what you get is, you can swap this around, but what I have here is the historical maps on the left and the current map on the right. And if I move this around, moves around one map, it moves around the other. So what we've got here is the OS 1-inch map, 1885 to 1900. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in on the area that I am working in at the moment. This is where my project is. This area here is called Preston Hill Quarry. And you can already see, this little menu on the bottom left is your friend. At the moment, it says 144 map layers cover this area. There's a little, very handy checkbox which says only show maps with more detail than the current zoom level, and it says 16. So there should be 16 maps which I can work with to find out the history of this area. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to check that box. And it's switched. If I check down here to select a map series, you'll see I've got a drop down of just a few maps. If I was to zoom out a little bit, if I wanted a bit more info, what I'll do is refresh, because sometimes it bugs out, and it's just a good idea to, you can see I've got a lot more maps now. So, and there you can see the details changed. I'm now looking at 1955 to 1961, and already you can see when I zoom in here, I'm going to take my Apple Pencil. You can see if you look at, let's see, the quarry area, can you see there's a black cross there on the left-hand side? That represents the point I am touching with my Apple Pencil on the right-hand side. So I can say, right, I wonder what this building is. And actually, you can see the building just above East Ness. I'm kind of moving it around here. And it's on land in this map, and I don't know if it's an inaccuracy or has there been extra landfill to come out to where this building was. In the real world, it's a winch, an old disused winch. And so I don't know if that's just an inaccuracy, although these maps have been brilliant, so I'd be surprised, or if there has been extra landfill. And there is some evidence when you stand out there that things have been filled in, you know, kind of quarry rubble's been used to kind of give them extra land. So let's have a look through this. I want to go, let's have a look at the most recent map. And you can see here, this is a fantastic map actually. I'm going to zoom in here. And this is from 1949 to 1972. Actually, it did seem to swap there. 1840s to 1860s. Yeah, it got confused. And if I tap this pier here, you can see the crosses appearing in the correct place. If I tap the pier in the old map, you'll see the cross appearing in the new map. And that's kind of how you tell what you're looking at exactly. Now, if I tap the conveyor belt, which is something I've been very confused about, clearly not in the map for the 1840s to 1860s. Now, that's expected. I'm just going to take a drink because I'm thirsty. But it gives me a data point. It tells me that I need to look after the 1860s. So I'm going to look after the 1860s. Let's do this. If you ever see a blank page like this, a blank map, hit refresh and it'll come back. you can actually see between 1949 and 1972, it's still not there. Now, this helps me immensely because I had two stories for this. When I went out onto the tourist boat out on the Forth a couple of years ago, they said that this conveyor belt used to load mines onto naval boats in World War II. However, I was photographing it a few months ago, and an old fella came up to me and said it was built by the quarry owners, and it was a complete folly that never got used because they never got planning permission for it, and then they were told they couldn't use it. And at the time, I didn't know what one was true. I know now that this is a folly, that this is much more likely that the old guy, as always with these things, you go and ask local people, the old guy was right. So that's fab. I understand that now. Also of note to me here, now you can see where it says Preston Hill Quarry. In fact, I'll use, yeah, you can see the cross there. You can kind of see the outline of it here. You can see where this has been filled in with water. Now this is a big political deal this week in a loch here, because people have passed away in it. There's been a couple of teenagers have died here. One person practicing diving died here, and there's an argument that it should be filled in. And that's part of why I'm doing this is, well, there's two reasons. One, to record it, because one way or the other, it's going to change. And two, to kind of point out that industry needs to clean up its crap, basically. And along with kind of hidden history stuff and all of that kind of stuff. And so this kind of loch here, kind of not really marked as a loch here. So it's interesting that it must have gone down fairly deep. Also, kind of around here, there were buildings. Now there are trees, but you can kind of see where the buildings were from this level. If I zoom in, you can just about see where buildings might have been. And also interesting to me, if I tap here and here, if I go there, until I saw this, now these are clearly buildings, I hadn't really noticed anything on the path. But when I saw that these buildings were here in, what, 1949 to 1972, I noticed on the ground, quite high up actually, so not technically on the ground, but in the field, if you like, there was remnants of big stone walls, and there was actually remnants of post holes which were going along this path here as well. And I just hadn't really taken any notice of them, but now I know that this is from when this was a working quarry. So that's really interesting to me. And all of this has helped me kind of pin together or piece together the story. One thing that's very interesting to me, if we go back as far as we can here, that's interesting, like, is that, have to zoom out quite far for this one. So that's not going to be particularly any use. The 10-mile ones are of little use. However, there's a drop down above the different maps. If you click on it, you've got a whole host of options, including military maps. And this is what I used to find out about the other area I was talking about, which I'll talk about in another video. If I go to Scotland specifically, we have much older maps now. So if I zoom back in on my area, so all this were fields. This was a big hill. If I zoom in there, obviously not going to get very much in the way of detail. Back in 1752, can go back as far as 1607, but I don't think that's going to count for me. So what I'm going to do, just to make sure I've got relevant data, is at this zoom level only show maps with more detail. Okay, so we've got the 1890s to the 1940s. And we can start to kind of piece together when, and there's a bit of a mismatch in the join here, when this quarry started to be used, possibly in the 1940s, I think, not the 1890s. Let's go back 1944 to 1971. We've seen that, well, we've seen detail like that. This is even more detail, so now I can see there was actually quite a few buildings here. And there's interesting stuff there. There's actually remnants of this. But this is the first time I've seen it on the map, and I hadn't really twigged. So I'm going to have to go back and shoot those as well. But there are remnants of these buildings in around here. Just a couple of blocks. But that's really interesting to me. If I go to 1892, you can see and where it says magazine. I didn't realize this. I thought this was a military building until I did some research. Magazine is not just in terms of wartime. A magazine was where explosives and ammunition were held securely. And the same is true for quarries. Explosives get held in a magazine in quarries as well. So initially, when I first saw this, I thought maybe it was military, but it's not. It's just normal quarry stuff. But you can see already there's just so much information that you can get from this. And particularly, if you're in Scotland, this resource will really help you tell your stories. I don't want to go on. I think I've probably already gone on too long about it. So I will let you go back out on location. And thanks for letting me bore you about maps. Bye. Yeah. So when you know the story of an area doing map regression, it starts to get quite easy to spot the evidence on the ground, which is great for our archaeologists. It's also great for documentary landscape photographers. So that's why I'm making this video, because I think there's a few people out there who will find this very helpful indeed. There's another area, the other side of the town, another area where this area likes to hide its history. It doesn't tell you much about it. Which is quite frustrating. So that's what I'm trying to do actually, is kind of document its history. I think it's fading. Nature's taking over. People are going to bulldoze it at some point because it's not pretty. But from the point of view of what you might like to call contemporary archaeology, it's really important to record it. So that's what I'm doing.